Hi everyone, and welcome back to the course. So yesterday we finished up on exercise 18. We haven't completed the HTML portion of it, so this won't quite work yet, but we'll do that today. Where you should be though is, I believe we started at step 11 and we ended at step 29. So steps 11 to 29 should be complete on exercise 18. So you should have a workspace that works, and you should also have assigned these permissions. So we have to assign permissions to our token to run different services. And we also gave our token permissions to run the REST training repository. So we'll start on exercise 16. This is just in case you close the command prompt from yesterday. If you keep it open, then the simple HTTP server will always be up. But if you do happen to exit out of the command prompt, it will shut down. So you'll have to go through these steps again. Luckily, they're quite simple. It's just 3 different steps and copy and pasting. So it should be okay to do again. So I'll just walk you through exercise 16, steps 2 to 4, and then we'll be ready to get started with exercise 18. So first go over to the command prompt. If you closed that down yesterday, you can get it simply by searching command prompt down at the bottom. Within the command prompt, type in cd/, which will take you to the C drive. And then you can copy and paste this path in. This is step 3, exercise 16. And copy it by going Control-C and paste it by right-clicking. This will navigate us to the REST API folder. And then you can copy and paste the Python command in. And this will start up the simple HTTP server. Again, just right-click and hit enter. All right, so now we should see that something is working and it's automatically set to port 8000. So we can continue on with exercise 18. It's just a quick refresher. We've made this component, so we've made the workspace to stream back any accidents that have occurred within an area. But now we need to make the HTML side of it to allow a user to draw an area, to select the coordinates, and then find any accidents within that area. So make sure you've completed exercise 16, which is what I just did here with the command prompts. And then we'll have to open up our first document. So in our C drive, FME data 2018, resources, REST API, my second app, www, and we'll find our index file. So these files are separated out by the HTML and by the JavaScript. Most professional websites made will do this. It's not all just in one file, and that's because it makes it cleaner and simpler to use if you have your HTML separate from your JavaScript. So that's what we did here. So our first step is we're going to modify the head section of our code. So between lines 5 to 16 here, we can see we're connecting to both the FME server playground, the FME server API, but we're also connecting to arcgis.com to get their JavaScript. And we also have a style sheet from them. That's their CSS. So that's what makes their website pretty to view. CSS basically handles all the styling components of the map. What we need to do is we need to add in this JavaScript tag here. And this will connect us to the arcgis.com JavaScript. So on line 15, under source, it should have the double quotes and the arcgis.com JavaScript. Next, we're going to see the body of the HTML, and this starts on line 18. So first we have a header. This is under H4. So if you see something with an H, that means it's a header, and 4 would be the fourth header, so it won't be very big. But it says this example clips an area selected by the user to BC traffic data. And then we have an example form where the user can click either a draw button or a reset button. So draw is where they would draw out the area that they're selecting, and reset is if they'd like to reset what they've just drawn. We also have a div. This is an area for our map to go, so our map will be there as well. Next, we'll have another label. So this will be submitting the request to FME server. And this label also has a button where the user can select it and click the data to area. And this will kick off the process clip function, which we'll see later on. So if we save this and we go to this link here, so I'm in step 4, and I'm just clicking on the link. We'll see that right now, nothing on our site is really working. You can open up the developer tools and hop around and inspect things. You should also see we should have errors as well, and that's just because we don't have anything set up properly to get this to work. Also, if you clicked around on the buttons, nothing will happen. So to make this page effective, we need to initialize the map, so the map will go here. We need to have a function to draw the polygon, have a function to reset the polygon, and then have a function to submit the request to FME server. So now we can go to our JavaScript and actually make these things functional. So I'm just going to open the JavaScript directly from here. So go to File and then Open. It should navigate me to where I just was. But I want to go to arcgis-map.javascript. So I'm going to double click on this. So once you're at the arcgis-map.javascript, we'll see we start off with a big function, and this is when the window loads. So automatically, as soon as the page is up, when the window loads, this is what we're going to see. These are the functions that are going to kick off right away. So here we have the first 15 lines. You can see we're calling things directly from Esri. These are Esri functions that we need to have working. If you're curious in the ArcGIS API, you can follow this link on step 6. And I'll talk all about it. But you can use these Esri components with FME components and combine them together pretty easily. So on line 17, we start our map div. So this is what we saw before. In our HTML, we had a map div. So this is where the map will go. On line 19, we need to enter which base map we'd like to use. So Esri has several base maps, and if you click here, you can find out where they all are. But under base map, delete, enter in the base map here, and write streets. And this is on line 19. Next, on line 20, we have to center the base map. So this is just using long and lat. So I'm going to copy where the center is. And paste that into the square brackets. Next, we can set the zoom. So this is how far the zoom will be by default. So the zoom will be 7. And then the minimum zoom will be set to 4. So we don't want the user to zoom in any less than 4. Next, we have the add to map function. This is again from the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. And here we're setting what we'd like the symbol to look like when they're actually drawing the coordinates. So it's just mainly styling components of what you're drawing when you're selecting the coordinates. So here we're setting a color. We're saying that it'll be dash dot and the fill will be solid. So later on, if you're curious about what that styling looks like, you can try and change it for yourself and see if you find the styling that you like better. On line 46, we can see that it's saving the geometry as Web Mercator. And lines 47 to 51, we're creating a graphic. And this graphic will be comprised of the geometry that we're collecting as the user clicks around the page, and also the symbol. We're also declaring a variable called clipping geometry, and that will contain the geometry rings. So as the user is clicking, we're saving the geometry. And then lines 54 to 64, we're using the Esri functions to draw the polygon. And we can see here Esri toolbars draw polygon and then draw reset. So here we're clearing what we've previously done. So we're deactivating the draw and we're resetting the graphic. So let's save this and see what our page looks like. We should have a map visible to us right now. So this was my previous page. If I hit Shift and then select Reload Page, it should reload the page with the map available. So currently we have everything we need to do to display the map. The user should be able to draw. So this is the symbol I was referring to earlier. You can change the outline of it and also the inside color if you want. But since this bounding box is not used in any other functions later on, it's not going to be very useful for us currently. So we can draw something, but right now it's not being processed in any way and it won't be sent to our FME server. So let's get those functions in as well. So we are on step 8 here, lines 67 to 72. First, we need to change our server host name. If you are using the training machine, this should be HTTP FME training. And then update the token to your own. So I saved mine on my desktop. If you didn't save it on your desktop, you should be able to see it in your downloads too, but we created the token in exercise 1. So you can copy and paste that token in here. And then click Save. Now we're going to go down to line 90 to 114. Right click and block uncomment. You can also simply delete those two components, so the slash and the star, and that will uncomment everything here. So these instructions are actually incorrect. We have uploaded the workspace to our FME server, so this will work. So what this is doing is it requires the workspace in the repository, and it's using that to run the data download function, which is on line 112. It's also going to take the clipping geometry that we saw above, and it's going to create parameters out of the clipping geometry. And this is the run data download function, which we saw in the previous exercise. So let's start by changing the repository and the workspace. So the repository will be REST training. And the workspace will be webapp.bc.roads.fmw. That has a lot of dots in it, and when I was practicing this exercise, I missed one. So I'm going to go back to my FME server and just ensure that my workspace and repository are saved under there. Because if my workspace and my repository don't match what's in my server, you're going to get a 400 error. And because I used a lot of capitalization and a lot of dots, it's very easy to make a mistake here. So I'm just going back and I'm double checking that I did this properly. So I can see under repository, I have REST training, and this is case sensitive. So make sure that you have REST and then T in capitals, and then training not capitalized. And then for my workspace, I do have webapp.bc.roads.fmw. All right, so we're taking the parameters collected or the geometry collected from the Esri function, and we have to turn it into well-known text. And this is what well-known text looks like. You have a polygon, and then you have coordinates within that polygon. There's a space here, but the coordinate pairs are separated with a comma. So we have another for loop. So we're going through the clipping geometry. We're looking for the lat, we're looking for the long, and then we're combining them together and separating the coordinate pairs with a comma. So in JavaScript, you can add things together. So if A was equal to app and B was equal to LE, apple would equal A plus B. Or you could do something like this and have a plus here. So you have the REST API is A plus equals fun. Together that will equal the REST API is fun. So to start off, to have the proper notation for well-known text, we'll have to have geometry is equal to the polygon and then two brackets here. And then we're going to cycle through our loop, finding all of the geometries that were collected from the user clicking around and combine those together. If you just looked at that statement, if it ended here and this didn't exist, you're just looking at the for loop, it will leave you with something like that. So this comma needs to be removed, and we need to add two brackets onto the end. So here, we're subtracting the comma. This is line 106. We're taking the geometry length and the geometry string, and we're minusing to minus the comma. And then we're closing the statement by adding two brackets on the end. Next, for FME to recognize the geometry parameter, it has to be under a parameter name. So in our case, it will be under geom, and that's what we set up yesterday. That's what our user parameter is called. It is under geom. And then geom equals plus, and that geometry string we just made. And using the repository, the workspace, and the parameter set, we can now run this workspace and then send the results to the show results function. So again, show results will be a callback function. So after we run this, FME server will send JSON to the show results function. Under show results, we can highlight everything, right click, and hit block and comment. Or we can simply delete our comments in there. So on line 78 to 79, we can see we're creating a new div and a new div divider. Next, we're getting the URL that comes back from the JSON here. So if you look at our documentation, you can see exactly what the JSON object, what it looks like when it's returned from FME server. So previously we did the console.dir command to find out where the URL is stored. However, we can also look at our documentation and find that URL. So it's stored within the JSON object, in the service response, in the URL. And next, we're just adding that to our page. So we're adding a hyperlink that a user can click to download the results. So now we can save it, and everything should be ready to go to test out the function. So on the ArcGIS map example, hold down Shift and refresh the page. This should clear out the cache and give you a brand new page. Next, draw a polygon. I like to make the polygon big to make sure I'll get something. You can double click to close it. So we're skipping a lot of steps here because we did them yesterday. We're down here where it says test the application, draw a big polygon, close it, and then select clip data to area. And be patient because sometimes it does take a while. If you double click it like I did, you will get two results with the exact same thing. So you can click download results, open up the zip file, and we should see that our HTML page with all the traffic incidents have been created. All right, so let's move on to exercise 19 now. If you're still working on exercise 18, there's no rush. We will have lots of time at the end of class, and Laura and I can assist you to the best of our abilities to help you finish. All right, so exercise 19 is our exercise with the web service URLs. So the web service URLs allow you to stream data directly to any third-party application. So in this example, we have an Esri base map, and we'll be streaming KML layers to the base map. And we're selecting what layers to stream based on if we have the box checked or unchecked, so we can stream different layers at different times. This would be a good example if you're using something with data that is updated quite frequently. Esri will store the KML files. Well, they will cache them for up to 30 minutes, But if you have data that's being updated every hour, then you'll receive up-to-date data back to your map. So let's take a look at exercise 19. So first we need to navigate to our REST API folder, find my third app, and then edit my third app with Notepad++. So first, you should notice that we only have the Esri JavaScript in here because we're using the web service URLs. We're actually using none of our own JavaScript in here. We're just using the URLs, and we'll plug in the URLs as needed. Next, we're going to review the body of the HTML. So this is in lines 110 to 126. Sorry about that, I had my screen paused. But all I've done so far is open up my JavaScript or my HTML file. I saw on lines 11 and 12 that we are connecting to the JavaScript here. And then I went to the body of the HTML. So this is lines 110 to 126. So here we have different checkboxes, and these checkboxes have different IDs, and these are the IDs that we're going to call upon when we're activating or deactivating these different layers. We also have CSS here. The CSS is directly from an ArcGIS exercise, so if you want, you can go there to find out how this was done. But CSS is essentially the styling components to your HTML page, so that's what makes it more appealing for a user to click on. Something to notice here is we have a z-index. A z-index is how far something is placed on the page. So if you want, let's say, a photo to be placed on top of your map, if you give a z-index, or if you give that photo a high z-index, then it'll be placed in front of the map. So in this case, we have a heading that we want to be placed in front of the map. And this is on line 132. So the heading will sit on front of the map. We're also giving it a white background and an absolute position on the screen. So if it has an absolute position, as the user scrolls around the screen, the heading will not change place. And that also means as you resize the screen, the heading will not be changed either. Next, we have a view div, which will be set to 100%. And then we have layer toggles as well. So now we're going to go to our FME server and import some project folders. So on the left-hand bar, we can go to projects and we can import some projects. So once you get to the projects page, click click Import. Next, you can click Upload File. Go to FME Data 2019. Click Resources. Select REST API. And then My Third App. There's 2 project folders in here. We'll want to import both of them, but we can only do them one at a time. So I'm selecting one, importing it. It's been successfully imported, so I'm going to go back to my projects. I'll go import again. And I'll do the web application project. And import it. So if I go back to my projects, I can see now I have 2 projects imported, the web application and the best practices analysis. So with the best practices analysis, I wanted this in my FME server just because it had some KML styling components that I liked. So you can actually take this project and import it to your own server if you like some of these KML styling components too. But here's everything that's located. And then the web application folder contains the web application repository, which stores a lot of workspaces that we'll be using in this exercise and other exercises as well. If we want, we can navigate there. So under repositories, go to web application, and we can view these web applications, or we can view these workspaces. So they are very simple. All we're really doing is taking a file, styling it with a KML styler, and then streaming it back as KML. So it's very simple, and it should be able to run quickly. All right, so let's head back to our JavaScript here. And we'll need to go to line 26 to line 47. So here we need to import our web service URLs into the following components. So each time we'll have to go through this process of creating this web service URL. So let's start on line 27. We'll want to paste a URL in here, and this is for our SkyTrain layer. So we'll go to our FME server. Under Web Application, and find SkyTrains. So it'll be webapp.skytrains.fmw. Click on that. I'll give you the Run Workspace section. Open up the Advanced panel. Next, click Share this workspace. And now click OK. This will give you a web service URL that we can copy and paste into, don't do that. Okay, so on my third app, you're on line 27, we can copy and paste that URL into the transportation layer, or also called the SkyTrain layer. So this full URL should be within quotations. And now on line 33, we're going to repeat this process, but instead we're using the SkyTrain buffer. So go back to FME server. And then instead of the SkyTrains, we're going to select SkyTrain buffer. Open up the Advanced panel and select Share this workspace. It's going to create a token for this workspace, and we can copy and paste the web service URL into line 33. And make sure that it's covered by our quotations. Next, we're going to repeat this process, but instead of the SkyTrain buffer, we're going to go to Parks. And this Parks workspace has a published parameter, which connects us to a shared resource. So this one's going to be a little different, but again, open up the Advanced panel, go to Share this workspace, and then we can see here, we can grant additional permissions. And we do want to do that. We're going to select the data resource. So this is only for the webapp.parks workspace. Under resources, you can select data and then click OK. Copy this URL and paste this into line 38. We have one last workspace, and this will be the food trucks. So back under Run Workspace, we have webapp.foodtrucks. open the advanced parameters and click Share this workspace. Then click OK and copy and paste this URL. Now click Save. So you should have 4 URLs filled out. We have line 27, line 33, line 38, and line 43. I'll give everyone a few moments just to make sure that they've copied and pasted their URLs in the correct location. All right, I'm just giving everyone a few moments to catch up. I understand sometimes our virtual machines can be a little slow, but we're just waiting on step 9 for everyone to get their URLs in place. Once you have your URLs in place, would you mind raising your hands just so I can see who's completed up to step 8? Okay, perfect. I'll just give a few more moments here. Once you've completed up to step 8, please raise your hand. All right, I think we're ready to continue on. So the next step is we need to change FME training to our public IP address. Because FME training isn't a publicly available DNS, Esri Maps won't be able to find our FME server. So for them to communicate, we have to use our public IP address. You can do that by visiting this website, What is my IP, and just clicking here. So if you do that, you should find your IP address. You can copy it. And then find and replace every instance of FME training and replace that with your public IP address. So to do that, we'll have to go Control H. Right now it's highlighting map view, but we'll have to type in FME training. And then paste in our public IP address. And just be careful that you're not pasting in any additional spaces. So now we can go through and replace all of these. So we should replace it 4 times. Next, we can go to step 10. These are lines 50 to 55. Under base map, write in topo. Then on lines 60 to 63, we need to add in our map layer variables, and these will add our layers to the map. So for this, it's probably best to copy and paste. But on line 60, we have our transportation layer. On line 61, we have SkyTrain buffer. We have our parks layer. And we have our food layer as well. Next, we can go to step 12. So look at lines 67 to 76. Here, we're taking that map div and we're just adjusting the center coordinates as well as the zoom level. So inside the square brackets, we can add in the center. And by the zoom level, it should be set to 14. Next, we can review lines 78 to 86. So the toggles are created using the DOM by ID, and this will get the layer objects that were previously created. So DOM by ID is an Esri JavaScript thing. It's similar to what we've been seeing, which is get by ID. So you're just looking up something based on its ID. And these are all of our different layers, so we can get all of our different layers and add it to the toggle. Next, we have line 90 to line 107. And we can see that we have all of these filled out except for one. So for example, on parks layer toggle, once it's changed, it will initiate the following function, parksLayer.visible equals parksLayer.checked. So we just need to keep that same methodology and add that for a food layer. So once something is changed on the food layer, if the food layer is visible, the food layer toggle should be checked. Now we can save this. And test our page. So here we can see our map with the area of Vancouver. If we select different layers, then they should load, unless if I've done something wrong. So I can see that I'm trying to connect to my layers, but it's not liking something about it. The first thing I'm going to do in this case is double check that my web service URLs do work. So if I copy and paste my web service URL from here, it should automatically download a KML file. I'm not sure why my web service URL isn't working, so I'm going to go back to my page, and I can see it is working there, but for some reason it's not liking my public IP address. I'm not sure why my IP address isn't working. Is anyone able to get this working? If you are, could you please raise your hand? So I think it's something with the machines themselves. Some people are able to get it working, and it looks like some people's aren't. So it must be something going on with our machines. Because it is something related to the public IP address. So our training machines are all essentially copies of each other. So sometimes it's not guaranteed that everything will work properly. I think this is a case of my public IP address not working properly for this machine. Some people are able to get it to work, so that's great. However, mine isn't working, and I can see some other people are having issues with this as well. So unfortunately, I think we're a little stuck there. I'll talk to the machine administrator tomorrow and see if there's something that we can do to get these IP addresses working. But the exercise should work minus the IP address. So I'm sorry about that, but maybe the solution is to get it working tomorrow. And I'll talk to our administrator about this and see why the public IP address is not working. So I'm sorry we ran into that issue today. I can also try quickly. I have another VM running and I can see if it'll work on that just to demonstrate what this would look like. But I don't think we can solve everyone's problems. Hi everyone and welcome back. So I was able to set up another VM and get this exercise to work on it just to show you what it should look like. Something is going on with a certain subnet of our machines with their public IP addresses. So for some people this exercise should work and other people's it won't. So that's really unfortunate, but we'll do some poking around tonight and see if we can get everyone's IP addresses to work. But this is what it'd look like if it had completed successfully. So you can click around and add different components to the map and then remove them. You can keep clicking around on the map and it won't run 1,000 different jobs on your FME server because Esri is actually caching each of these layers for 30 minutes. So you can click and unclick as much as you'd like. All right, so now I'm going to switch back to my other VM. Uh-oh. Sorry, now I'm going to switch back to my other VM and not create that big loop. All right, so that was exciting. Hopefully we can get that working for everyone tomorrow. But it should work fine with the public IP addresses as long as that's set up correctly. So our last exercise today is we will be looking at data uploads in FME server. So this exercise, we're going to build a web application that can accept a file to upload and then pass that file through the workspace to validate it and stream back the results. So we're not doing that immediately. We're going to be doing a simpler exercise first, and then we'll work from that simpler exercise and we'll modify it to be this data validation application. So we're going to start from something simple just to go over how to upload data using the JavaScript API and what that looks like. And then tomorrow we'll be able to go through the data upload and validation exercise. So we are on exercise 20, data uploads. So we'll want to go to File, and then Open. Under the REST API page, we'll want to go to My Fourth App, and then open My Fourth App. First, we have the head section, which is what we've seen before. We're not using any Esri components here, but we do have the JavaScript API. Next, we're going to set up the form within the body. So we're going to step 3 and looking up line 13 to 18. So this is line 13 to 18, and this will be the example form. So this is what we've seen before. We had this in the first web application we did, where we had a form that a user could fill out. And this would set up a workspace. So under value, fill in value here, we'll have samples. And then under workspace, we have easytranslator.fmw. Make sure you don't do what I did and add an extra double quote in there, because that could cause an issue later on. Next, we're going to go, sorry, I'm just making sure I close that off. Yeah. Next, we're going to go to line 20 to 22. And we have a value in here that we need to fill in. So in lines 20 to 22, we have an area to display the files that will be used, that will be uploaded to FME server. So currently, we can only accept one file at a time with the FME server REST API. So we need to specify what that file is. And on line 21, under type, we need to fill in button here. So on this file list, you can click the button and then it'll activate the function get files. Get files looks up anything that has been uploaded to FME server. And then we have lines 20 to 24. So on line 24, we have an empty form with the ID of options. This is blank currently, but we'll build something called build options later on to populate the form with the workspace parameters. On line 26, we have run workspace with data. So now we'll run the workspace with the data that's been uploaded to the FME server. And then we have divs for our results as well. So next we need to add our server credentials to the FME server init function. So on line 33, we'll see window on load, and we'll see your server and your token. So here we need to update this with our server host and our token. So it should be http://FME training. And then we'll have to have a token as well. And this was saved to the desktop. Next, we're going to go to the set workspace function. So on set workspace, we're going to find the repository name and the workspace name as well. So this is get element by ID. So we're going to get the repository by the repository name ID. And this is on line 50. And then under workspace name, we're going to copy and paste that as well. Next, we're going to review the get session function, and this is on line 43. So on line 43, we call get session. This function requires the repository, the workspace, and the callback to run. So on line 43, we can see we have the repository, the workspace, and then the callback will be set vars. The get session function essentially generates a random number from FME server. This keeps each session unique. So if a user is submitting the same file, or if you have multiple users submitting the same file, they'll always have a different session ID. The session ID is used when the user uploads the file. It goes to a folder that has the session ID on it. So we'll see this shortly, but if you refresh the page, each time you refresh the page, the session ID will be different. And then when you use the data upload function, it will go to a folder with a session ID on it. The purpose of this is so multiple users aren't uploading the same file, and if they are, they're not uploading over themselves. So we can see this here if we go to our page. So this page will not be functional currently, but we can go to the console and we can see a different session ID. So if we go inspect, we go console, we will see an object, and under the service response, we will see a session ID. Now if we refresh the page, we can see that the session ID is changed. So that's what the get session function is. It essentially just creates a random number. And this random number can then be used when you're uploading a file and creates a folder under that number. So that each file that is uploaded will go to a different folder. And we can actually see the file path if we open up this response more. So if you keep opening up the response, so if you go service response files folder, we should see here where the destination file will go to. So in the FME data repository, that's a macro. It'll go under samples, easy translator, and then have the session ID on the end. All right, now we can go to the set vars function. And this is line 61 to 69. So here we're setting the variables. So we could see before we had the path here. This is the session ID. And we're also going to use the JS ID as well. And the JS ID will be the session ID, so we can just copy and paste that in. So next we can review the generate options function. This is on line 54 to 59. So here we're setting the workspace, and then we're getting the workspace parameters. So this will be the repository, the workspace, and then the callback will be build options. So we saw this in the first exercise as well. First, we're getting the workspace parameters, and then we'll show them to the user using the using the callback function build options, which uses generate form items. So next we'll go to line 73. And we can go to generate form items, get the options, and then the JSON. Then on line 76 to 77, we're getting the options form by get element by ID, and we're adding the input. And then we're setting the input added to equals false. So here we're going to start a for loop. This is on line 79. So we're seeing if a file has been added yet. And if it has not been added, we'll continue through the loop. But if it has been added, we're going to set it to not equal false. Or we're going to set it to equals true instead of, yeah. So when you're going through the loop, first added will equal false. Once we find the file and it has been added, we're going to set this to added equals true, and we're going to stop the loop. So on line 80, we have write a file type here, and we're looking for a file. And then line 82, we need to specify what element we would like to add. So in our case, we're adding an input element. So instead of having document create element, write element type here, we're going to change that to input. So this is on line 82. By create element, this will have to equal input. So this loop specifies that we're creating a button with the value upload file. Once the button has been created, we're going to set that to equal true, and we won't create another button. That's because the FME server REST API by default can only handle one file being uploaded at a time. So we don't want to give people the option to upload two files. So next we'll go to step 13. And this is on lines 92 to 97. So this function will upload a file to FME server. If you'd like to see where this function is located, we can go to the FME JavaScript API. And then we can Control F to find where the upload files is located. I have a screenshot right here of the upload file parameters. So you would need a repository, a workspace, files, so the file object, and the JS ID, which we got from the set bars function. So let's go to line 96, which should be here. And we'll have to fill in the values for the function to work. So first we have the repository, then the workspace, then file input, the JS ID, and then our callback function, which will be process files. So again, this is on line 96. We're filling out the parameters for the data upload function. So we have the repository, the workspace, the file input, the JS ID, and the callback function, which will be process files. So if we looked at the get files function, once the user clicks refresh file list, which you can see here, it will activate the get files function, which is located on line 99 to 102. This will activate get data uploads. So here we're just looking at what has been uploaded to FME server using that JS ID. So when a user clicks refresh file list, it's actually just activating get data uploads. And the callback for this function is also process files. So as soon as a file has been uploaded, our user is seeing files, it's going to activate the process files function. And the process file function is on line 104, so right beneath both of them. So this function displays the file name and the file size, and it will display it in the file list div. So on line 105, we can modify the code to replace this. And then save. So now under var list, we're going to get the elements by ID, which will be the file list. So this function will display the file that was loaded and the file size. Once the user has entered their parameters, they can click Run Workspace with Data, and then this will activate the Run Workspace function. So Run Workspace is on 152 to 169. Run Workspace will check if files are presently loaded or if they're in the archived variable. If the files are set to archived, they are then set to the file variable. So if the files are undefined, are not undefined or not archived, if the files are not archived, if archives are not undefined, the files will equal the archives. So essentially, if there's an archive file that has been within the session, it will pull that file up and say that the file is equal to the archived. Therefore, this function will work because it'll be pulled up to files. Then we're using the set workspace function to get both the repository and the workspace. And then we're entering in our params, which will be the file input name and the actual file. This will be sent to process params. And then we can see that we run the workspace with the data using the run workspace with data function, which contains the path, the params, and then show results, which will show the results of our workspace. But before we get there, we need to look at process params because we need to see how this file is processed. So this is in line 123. So we have line 123 to 150. So first we need to get the parameters from the options form and then set the variables in the format that FME server will understand. So we're getting everything that's in the options form. So for var inputs, we're going to set get element by ID to options, and this is on line 124. Under var inputs, document.getElement by ID, we're filling that into options. And then under selects, we'll write options as well. Then we could inspect the page and under options, see what we have. But we have both inputs and selects here. So we'll need to fill in those tag names as well. So on line 124, we have .getElement by ID, which will be set to options. But we can also set the get elements by tag names to be input. Next, under selects, so on line 125, the get element by tag name will be select. So the final function will look like that. So in the first section of the function, we're setting the inputs, selects, options, and properties. The inputs and selects are then turned into arrays, and the arrays are merged together. So we can see we're turning them into arrays here, and we're merging our arrays together. Then we have a for loop. The for loop scans through the options, and then it formats the options so they're in the proper notation for the params variable. The first if statement checks if the option name and the option value do not equal the file name input. This indicates that the option is not a file. Then it checks the option type to see if it's not a button. If this is true, the parameter is an input box, and the options are set to the proper option format. If the option type is select, then the selected option will go into the proper notation. And then, like always, we'll have an extra ampersand on the end of all of our parameters, so we'll need to subtract that from here. So we're just subtracting the ampersand from the back, and then we'll return the properties. So we're going through and we're essentially checking what the file type is, and depending on what the file type is, we're going to format it a little differently. So if it's a select, that's a drop-down list. So we're seeing where the selected index is, and we're getting that value. If it's just a property, we can get the value very easily by going option.value. Sorry, if it's not a select, if it's just an input, then we'll be able to find the option quickly just by going option.value. Next, we have line 171 to 187. This is the show results function. So this is the callback for the run workspace with data function that we can see here. So here, we're using that URL that's returned, and we're creating a hyperlink that says download results. And we're appending the results section to show that hyperlink. So now we should be able to save this, and we'll see it in action. So we'll want to go to myfourthapp.html. First, we can choose a file. So we can choose a file that's selected from here. So see FME data 2018, data, boundaries, Vancouver neighborhoods. Then we can click upload file, which should upload a file. And then here we can see the show results function will tell us exactly where this file is uploaded. We can see here it is using our session ID. After we've uploaded the file, we can specify the coordinate system that we're setting. And then select Run Workspace with Data. Here we can see everything that's returned from the FME server, and we can also download the result. So this was our last exercise that we had planned for today. If you need any help with this exercise, as always, Laura and I will stay behind and we'll help you with anything you need. Unfortunately, if you're having problems with exercise 19, just with the IP address not working, I'm not sure if we'll be able to help you with that one, But if you have questions about exercise 18, which we completed today, or exercise 20, we can always give you a hand. If you've completed everything, feel free to leave for the day, and we'll meet back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.